Protect your car with 3W Liners all-weather floor mats. Made from durable materials like TPE and rubber, our mats are designed to withstand rain, snow, and mud with deep grooves to trap dirt and liquids. For a custom fit and advanced protection, visit 3W Liners. That's the number 3, WLINERS.com today. Cases, innovation drives us. Since 2008, we've been creating cutting-edge technology products that make your life easier. With a focus on performance, design, and customer service, we're here to help you work smarter, not harder. Join us on our journey to simplify your world. Visit acasis.com today. That's ACASIS.com today.
Farmhounds offers natural treats and chews made with quality products that support family farms, regenerative agriculture, and humane farming practices. Give your dog the best with wholesome, organic ingredients that promote health and happiness. Shop now at farmhounds.com. Unlock a world of convenience with Mully Box, your one-stop solution for personalized subscription boxes delivered right to your door. From gourmet snacks to unique finds, each box is tailored to your tastes. Experience the joy of surprises. Subscribe today at mullybox.com. That's MULLYBOX.com. We are Rogue Media Sports.
You're back. It's the Cam Show on Rogue Media Sports Network. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of the Rogue Media Sports Network. We're coming on after the Pete Souza Show. We're live on YouTube just as we are high noon Eastern time every weekday, and then available wherever you get your podcasts. I have not updated my decor from my Locked On Baylor show, so we're just going to roll with it then. Today we're talking about the Patriots draft strategy and why they might have just had the golden ticket fall right into their lap and how this could change everything they do 1 week from tonight during the NFL draft's first round. Plus, we will have Matt Barry of the Bruins Benders podcast to talk about the no changes going on with this Boston Bruins team and why the ownership is completely tone deaf, and that could lead to a lot more seasons like this if they're not careful. Plus, a little Celtic City retrospective. Am I going to be defending Rick Pitino? Am I going to be defending Boston Celtics coach Rick Pitino? Potentially. Stick around. All that and more coming up on this episode of The Cam Show. The Patriots might have just got lucky. Okay, they pissed away their own luck in Week 18 when they beat the Buffalo Bills and threw away the number one pick, and they might have just gotten lucky again. Kolton Miller, the left tackle for the Las Vegas Raiders, former first-round pick, very impressive tackle, although he's not made an all-pro team or anything like that, is holding out. He is not reporting to voluntary workouts for the Raiders because apparently he is searching for a new contract. Patriots, you might have just gotten the golden ticket to fall right into your lap. We talked all season long, not just about how awful this offensive line was, but about how you don't get these guys in free agency. You don't get top tier left tackles. You don't really get starting tier NFL left tackles in free agency. It just doesn't happen. And you actually got lucky in that Ronnie Stanley made it to free agency, but, well, not really because he re-signed with the Ravens. And you were doubly unlucky because you didn't have anybody on the market that was an NFL starting caliber left tackle, and this is not a strong tackle draft at all. The number one prospect in the draft at tackle is probably an NFL guard. So this is an opportunity that you absolutely need to check in on. The fact that Kolton Miller wants out of Vegas, and it might only potentially cost you a couple of mid-level draft picks. I don't think it's going to cost you the number 4 pick in the draft. I doubt it. Maybe it's a second, maybe it's a third. If you're the Patriots, with a couple of third-round picks this year and with some opportunities to trade back into the end of the first round this year, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you use some of your other draft capital to get a 29-year-old starting left tackle? That is better than anything you've got right now. To me, it's a no-doubter. And if you do make that trade and you potentially extend Kolton Miller and give him the contract he's looking for, then that could change a lot of how you work the rest of the draft. It might make that number 4 pick a lot easier. And maybe it is easier to trade back. Maybe you don't have that pressure, that organizational fan pressure to hit exactly on number 4 with a guy you might be reaching for. By the way, Kolton Miller has some experience with Josh McDaniels. Of course, McDaniels was his head coach in Vegas a few years ago. And this is what Josh McDaniels had to say about him when he was still the head coach of the Raiders. Yeah, he's one of our best workers. There's no doubt about it. You can see why he's improved each year he's been in the NFL. He puts a lot of time and effort into it in the facility. He works really hard in the weight room, and he's in great condition. He studies hard. Oh, boy, this is hitting all the Patriots' heartstrings right here. This is Patriot Way 101, right? Quote, in order to be really good in this league, there's a lot of things you've got to do well. And Kolton gives a great effort every day at everything that he's responsible for. There was mutual respect, both sides. Josh McDaniels loved Kolton Miller. Kolton Miller loved playing for Josh McDaniels. Kolton, you could do it again because the Patriots got the space. They'll give you the contract you want. Okay, there's not a lot of teams in the league that are about to give out a big-time commitment to a left tackle who has not made a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro. That's not to say you're not talented, but there's just not a lot of teams that will do that. The Patriots will do that. The Patriots are desperate enough to do that. And they know they can't go through another season with an offensive line that they just had. Drake Maye leaves games for concussion protocol twice. They can't have that again. They absolutely cannot. And a couple of those were, a couple of those big hits he took this year were going outside the pocket, but he had to go outside the pocket a lot with this offensive line. The answer is not Vidarian Lowe, but it could be Kolton Miller. Now you might have to pay too much in the trade market as well, because the Raiders know how desperate you are, and it's still early on in the process, and they know that you probably want to get this done before the draft, which is in a week. But if you do get this done, you've got all kinds of options when it comes to the first round of that draft. We've already laid it out on this show before. Recommend checking those videos out on the channel, that there's ways that the Patriots can trade back into the first round. There's a way that they can have 2 first-round picks come next Thursday. And there are some premium guys that might be available for some of their first pick in the second round. They're only picking the second round. They have 2 third-round picks. So there's ways that they can have a couple of selections next Thursday night. And so what I mean by that is you can trade for Kolton Miller and then truly go for the best player on the board. Because I know they've already said that. I know Elliot Wolf has said, yeah, best player. But they're going to draft Will Campbell, is what it looks like. And I don't know that Will Campbell is the best player available at number 4. I'm really high on the Jalen Walker pack, okay? I'm conducting the Jalen Walker train at this point. I think he's a better player than Will Campbell. But you go out and you get a Kolton Miller, a guy who can be a starting left tackle in this league. Then maybe you can go and get Jalen Walker. Or maybe you don't like Walker as much and you want some offensive weapons. Then you've already got your left tackle. You don't need to reach on Will Campbell. You could trade back and get Tyler Warren from Penn State. I think that would be an awesome, awesome draft pick. I think whoever gets him is really getting a bargain because he could fall outside of the top 10. In fact, some mock drafts have Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State, going in the 20s. And if that is the case, by some divine providence, that is the case, the Patriots could draft someone at 4 and then trade back into the first round and potentially pick up Tyler Warren. That would be an absolute win, Kevin Costner draft day type situation. But there are some prospects here. I know there's been rumors that they like Matthew Golden, the wide receiver from Texas, who doesn't seem to have first-round size, but does have first-round productivity. So maybe you could trade into the 20s and get someone like Matthew Golden. Or maybe Ted McMillan is still somewhere there in the 20s. I don't love Ted McMillan. I don't love the Patriots drafting receiver at all, whether it's at the beginning or the end of the first round. They haven't done well in either of those drafting receivers historically. Irving Fryer, Terry Glenn, all the way to N'Keal Harry being the last pick in the first round. I don't love that, but I think Todd McShay, guest of Rogue Media Sports Network, there we go, guest of the Pete Souza show yesterday, he said something good about Will Campbell. And he said, look, I know it's a top 5 pick. You don't want to use it on someone that could be a guard. But if you draft a receiver and they're a bust, you have a bust. If you draft a running back and they're a bust, they're a bust. If you draft Will Campbell and he's a bust at tackle, chances are he's probably going to be a really good guard. And so at least you have something, right? And we've seen that before with the Patriots. We've seen that on the offensive and defensive lines. Guys they thought were going to be, at one position, they end up thriving at another. Logan Mankins at guard. That's a good example there. Obviously, I think they had the foresight on this with Bill Parcells, but drafting Teddy Bruschi, who is a defensive lineman, and making him a really versatile linebacker. Same thing with Mike Vrabel. They pick him up from Pittsburgh as a special teamer who was a defensive end in college, and they say, no, you're going to play outside linebacker. And he becomes a borderline Hall of Famer at that position. So at least with Will Campbell, there's some fallback there. I just find it, the things that happen with those teams and those moves is those teams were good. Bruschi's first year, they went to the Super Bowl. Vrabel's first year or second year with the Patriots, second year, I think, they won the Super Bowl. With Logan Mankins, they were already in the dynasty years. Okay, they just won the Super Bowl a few months before they drafted him. The difference is with this Patriots team, you're so far away from that that you're going to have years of that on your resume of having a top 5 pick when you could a year in which you went into the final game of the season in the number 1 draft position, and instead you came out of that draft 3 months later with a guard at the number 4 pick. That's just it's a tough sell, man, and it's a bad look. If you are in the Super Bowl in 2 years, that's a different story, but it's a huge risk for me right now. And so the way I look at it, if you can go out and get Kolton Miller, you get a starting caliber NFL left tackle, you go and get him, a guy that your offensive coordinator already likes, and a guy that this left tackle already likes playing for in Josh McDaniels. If you go out and get that, you have all kinds of options when it comes to that first round pick. Okay, you can trade up if you still want to. You've got some capital to do that, and maybe get a Travis Hunter. More realistically, you can trade back. But either way, there are options galore if you go out and make this trade and sign a guy like Kolton Miller, and it could fix some of your biggest problems right away before you even have to send in the envelope for that first round pick in a week. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Is this the trade the Patriots need to make? Is this the good luck they have been waiting for? Let me know in the comment section. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Only about 10% of you guys watching are actually subscribed, so hit that subscription button. We're bringing you nothing but Boston sports content 5 days a week. We're live on YouTube every weekday, high noon Eastern time, and then we're available wherever you get your podcasts. Zach Burke keeps us on the air. I'm your host, Cam Stewart. Coming up after a short break, we're going to have Matt Barry of the Bruins Benders podcast talking about the fallout from this season, why no moves have been made in the front office, and what is next for the Bruins. That's coming up next on The Cam Show.
We'll be right back after these quick words from our sponsors. This is Rogue Media Network.
When you learn a language with Babbel, you start a journey that takes you further and further. Anytime and anywhere you wish. It's easy and fun. Broadens your horizons and keeps your brain fit. A journey into new thoughts, new cultures, new adventures. So what are you waiting for? Start your journey with Babbel now. Go to babbel.com or download the app.
BadCreditLoans.com is a pioneering service provider that has carved a reputation in the financial industry for its dedication to helping individuals with bad credit secure loans. By making timely repayments, borrowers can gradually repair their credit history, thereby increasing their chances of securing better loan terms in the future. BadCreditLoans.com serves as a beacon of hope for those with bad credit. Simple, fast, and reliable loan application process. And its commitment to responsible borrowing makes it a trusted partner in the journey towards financial stability.
Did you know nearly all stock price changes of 10% or more result from a single news headline? These news catalysts create trading opportunities every day. All you need is a little help to reach out and take them. It doesn't matter if your investment budget is small or big. All you need is Benzinga Pro and its powerful news alerts, price tracking, and portfolio monitoring. Subscribe now, and we'll skyrocket your portfolio today.
alleviate.com.
I've always had thin hair my whole life. It breaks off at a certain length. In the last 6 months, I've noticed it just really bad. I mean, you could totally see it. I wear a hat a lot. I tried several different products. My experience with the Bosley MD hair regrowth kit was amazing. It was easy to use. It let me take off my hat. I could go in public and have my picture taken and feel normal again.
alleviate.com.
And now, back to our show.
Welcome back to the Cam Show, Rogue Media Sports Network. We bring in our weekly Bruins guest, Matt Barry of the Bruins Benders podcast. The season is over. It's one of those years where we actually know the last day of the Bruins season, and it's not just the conclusion of the second round of the playoffs. Matt Barry, we talked about last week, some moves maybe there'll be some moving and shaking in this front office. There was the report from the Greg Hill show earlier this week that a resignation was coming on Wednesday. It is Thursday. Everyone's still in place. the Boston Bruins seem to be running this thing right back into 2025-26. Is that a good move?
No, I I mean, I don't think it is. I don't, I don't love the way they've developed players. I don't, they have a really high draft pick. Sure, they're going to get a pretty good player there, but will they develop them? Are they going to try to make him Patrice Bergeron and some 200-foot player with defensive responsibilities? Or are they going to let the guy be a creative hockey player? I don't know. I mean, I just think that the Bruins have always been small family atmosphere, keep it in the family. I didn't expect, what I expected was Neely to step away or go to a consultant role, and Sweeney to bump up and Gold to bump up after him, something like that. Evidently nothing's going to change in that way. They have a couple of prospects right now that are decent, and they have a little bit of a good feeling about, maybe cautiously optimistic. You need guys like Elias Lindholm and Jeremy Swayman, some of the regular core guys to play better. That's the number one thing. I mean, if they don't play better, you're screwed anyway, probably, or you're just not going to be very good. So I don't know. I don't think it's a great move. I mean, we always want the grass is always greener. We always want a new regime. And what does that look like? And no one really has an answer, but it's getting a little stale. And I think that this year, Don Sweeney is going to try like hell to make the playoffs again. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they could, if things go right. And that's going to be the target. It's not going to be tanking. It's not going to be being bad again and trying to develop young guys and roll with the punches. It's going to be, we're going to get this team back to playoff contention. And that's what the Jacobs family wants. So, but again, they've had 4 general managers in my lifetime. It's not like crazy. It's something they do every once in a while. So I'm not surprised, but I don't think it's a great move.
And the Jacobs family, they have spoken. They did that letter to the fans. They also did an exclusive with the Globe. And once again, showing that they really don't quite understand, still after all these years, they don't quite understand this city or this fan base or really this sport, I think is what we can conclude as well. And they had said, I don't understand why. Charlie said this. He said, I don't understand why fans want Cam Neely and Don Sweeney out. It's like, really?
Yeah, it was funny.
Are you kidding? I think it's not just been this year, by the way, because it's something that we've complained, we as Bruins fans just generally kind of complain about the last couple of years when things were going well. There was still that underbelly of Bruins fans. It's like, they have no farm system. They don't draft anybody. They get rid of these picks and they still don't get out of the second round. So there's a lot to be said for that. And there is a quote in here that I wanted to get to. This is with the Jim McBride interview, and Charlie Jacobs basically throws it on somebody else. That's what the Bruins love to do. They love throwing it on somebody else. And they said, I feel it was a little bit disorganized. There was a real lack of structure. You see your teams come through. They have a system. They have perhaps a fallback play. And Monty just didn't have the answers. And it's like, really? Because the Bruins won 33 games this season. The Blues, under Jim Montgomery, won 35. They're in the playoffs. And still, it is somebody else's fault. And Matt, you and I talked about this. I think we weren't against the Jim Montgomery fire, and clearly something needed to happen, right? And there was questions of what his play style was. And I think what came out and kind of came to the forefront was that there was just such a disconnect between general manager's office and head coach. But how infuriating is this, that we're still blaming the coach? The last one before Jim Montgomery has already won a Stanley Cup. And now Jim Montgomery comes in. He's got this great turnaround with the Blues. It's like, when do we stop blaming the coaches that are not here? It's so tone deaf. I think we lost Matt there for a second. I think we lost him. But it's crazy to kind of expand on that point. It's always somebody else's fault. It's not Don Sweeney. It's not the ownership. It's got to be the coach. And still we go through this game. It was Bruce Cassidy's fault because he was, alienating the younger players. He was too hard on them. And then he goes and he wins the Stanley friggin' Cup the first year. He's somewhere else. And oh yeah, that guy that bitched about it, Jake DeBrusk, he's somewhere else, having a career year in Vancouver, 28 goals, career high. And then it was Jim Montgomery's fault. And like I said, we weren't against that move. I was on here saying it needed to happen, but also we've got to take a long, hard look at this front office. Like Jim Montgomery can only deal with the roster that he's got in front of him, and that's on the front office. And then Jim Montgomery goes in to a team that was really just like the Bruins. Okay, they didn't have a ton of offensive skill. They didn't have this great pipeline of talent that was ready to come in. And here are the Blues. They were 8 points out of it with 20 games left, and they're in the postseason. They're a danger team in the playoffs. And yet I read these quotes, and it's always somebody else's fault. And I agree with Matt. Like, I can't believe that we're just not making moves. I mean, I can because of the reason he gave. It's so incestual. It's so mom and pop, the Boston Bruins. And they'll point to, Steve Yzerman going to Detroit, and that hasn't necessarily worked out yet. And yet it's the same crap every time. So Matt Barry, I ask you, is it just getting old that they keep blaming somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, they're just passing the buck. I mean, look, I agree with Charlie Jacobs. I thought it was a mess in preseason. We talked about it in preseason. I mean, guys weren't playing that much. They were playing like guys who had no chance to make the team. Joey Abate and these guys were playing all sorts of minutes in the preseason. What are you doing? It almost seemed like that they were just sort of biding their time and not overextending themselves, and thought that they would just kind of ease into the season. They didn't need a lot of preseasoning and stuff. And then we heard that there were injuries, and Elias Lindholm said he had a back injury in August, and it was disjointed. And we said that. So I agree, Charlie, you're right. But that's not the reason for a complete meltdown. You can right the ship in about a month if you aren't organized in preseason. You can find a way. You have a bunch of veterans there. In Montgomery, we talked about Montgomery. That was a whole colossal lame duck coach scenario. They didn't want to give him what he wanted. They didn't give him a lot of say. Like, they started to take away a lot of the say, I think, in the lineup structure and the roster moves. And then he became like hands in his pants guy, like just standing there behind the bench. Yeah. Like, body language sucked. Like, so we look at many things can be true. But if the bottom line is that this team wasn't built or didn't have enough, it was disorganized. The fact that the philosophy didn't match the personnel. And that was from the beginning. Like, get all these big, heavy guys when Montgomery wants to go north-south quickly. So you have a coach who coaches a different style than the personnel you brought in. So that's kind of where it started. So, yeah, you can vaguely say, yeah, it was Montgomery's fault, really. But some of it was Montgomery's fault, but there were circumstances that made it difficult.
Yeah. So. And there's 4 months between firing Jim Montgomery and the fire sale. 4 months. Like, again, to your point, like, it's not like you didn't have time to get this right. We weren't expecting a President's Trophy after firing Jim Montgomery, right. But there wasn't any reason. And this roster was not great, but you look at some of the other teams in the playoffs, especially St. Louis, and you're like, well, there's really no reason this team shouldn't have been there. Or, Montreal was last in December, and here they are in the postseason. It's just, to me, it's a hollow excuse. And who knows who the next sucker is? I mean, they've not told Joe Sacco, but
that's what it boils down to. I still think it's Jay Leach. I don't know if it'll be Sacco again for one more run, but I still think it's Jay Leach. Maybe Mike Sullivan, but it's someone in the family, so to speak.
Yeah.
Look, and they're not going to bring a guy with a different philosophy and all new ideas when they love to keep it all in house. Like, they're not going to bring in some guy from outside who has all these new innovative things, and they don't like to construct the roster that way. They're not going to do that. They're going to get a guy who shares their views. Like, that's what it is.
And it is. It's sad. I'll admit I haven't gone really in depth in terms of the coaching search and who that's going to be. We've been focused on, who they're going to get in free agency and if they do that, and who they're going to pick in the top 5 of the draft potentially. Although we got to wait that out tonight with the Flyers last game of the season. But you still got a pretty barren prospect pool. I know the Will Zellers thing looks good. He's a couple years away. He's just set the ECHL goal record. He's going to be at North Dakota next year. That's the guy you got in the along with Middlestat in the Charlie Coyle trade from Colorado. But looking at the one guy really that they've brought up at the end of this season, that's Fabian Lysell, who still took a while. It took some time to get his feet underneath him, but really these last couple games, he's looked positive. And it's almost like they should have had him up before and playing in the lineup when they knew they were tanking this season.
You think? Yeah, I mean, instead of having these Johnny Beaches and those guys in there night after night doing nothing. Yeah, I mean, I would have put him in a month earlier probably. But you're seeing some nice things, and I am cautiously optimistic about Lysell now when I was getting nervous before. So that's good. Patra, he's performed well in Providence. Like, I'm cautiously optimistic there.
Yeah.
Guys like Lowry has to be much better. Who's Nadinov? He scored a goal last game and looks okay at times, but he doesn't produce a lot. No. He's played over 80. He's played 85 or so NHL games and, has like 5 or 6 goals. Like, he doesn't produce a lot. There's a lot of flash and flair there, not a lot of substance. So I'd like to see a little bit more from him. Minton looks pretty good. I'd rather have Minton than Middlestat. Let me put it that way. Because I'd rather run with him going forward. So, look, I think there's a little bit of there as far as the prospects are concerned. But they're going to need a winger. They still need to figure out the center thing, which, if they get a top 4 pick, top 3 pick, whatever it is, and get a really good center, you might not be ready next year, but you might be ready the year after. Then that might help you out. Get a winger who can score 25 goals to go on the second line. That'll help you out. But it's going to be an uphill climb. They need a right shot D. Hampus Lindholm, they all reports are that he's going to be healthy. They don't have a lot of concerns about the structure of his knee. That's great news because that would have been another alarming thing. So I think left side, they're okay. Right side, they need a second pair right shot D. I think Neil Pionk with Winnipeg just signed an extension or is going to today or tomorrow. So there's a guy I kind of liked. So look for the right shot D guy, maybe too, in the off season. But look, I don't think it's a quick fix. Can they make the playoffs next year? I think maybe. Make a couple of shrewd moves. Guys play better to their ability. Swayman has a better year. There's not the mess of negotiations and locker room shit and the coach getting fired and all that. Maybe they do. But it's not a Stanley Cup contending team for a while.
One of the good things about being in the off season is you just don't have to hear Jeremy Swayman as much.
I know. Today was another one. Today, like I'm holding accountability, but boy, I'm going to take these lessons learned, and I'm going to, for the hard times, I'm going to remember it. Jeremy, just stop the puck. Just stop the puck.
Honestly, bro, we don't need you to be making like these deep Facebook quotes, man.
Just fucking stop the puck.
And the good news is for Swayman, like if you do start stopping the puck again, then you're zany. Then you're just a goalie who's a little bit out there.
Yeah, and everybody loves you because you're a zany, kooky guy who saves a lot of pucks.
And you could be as much of a dick as you want. You could beat Dominic Hasek and Martin Brodeur. Like they weren't the most liked teammates in the world.
When you're not. Everybody hates your guts.
Right. Right.
So, that works.
I do want to ask about Fraser Minton a little bit because he's been nice. He's been impressive. Obviously, he did have a cup of coffee in the league with the Leafs before the trade. Do you like him in a larger role than Matthew Patra next year?
That could be. I mean, either they're the second or third line centers. I think flip flop. I think Patra will probably have every opportunity to do it to start because he has a little more experience and he had some really good experience with Providence. I think he's a little bit further along, so I think you'll see Patra maybe second line, but Minton as a third line center. I just don't know what you do with Casey Middlestat. I would try like hell to see what you can get for him.
Trade him.
I just don't think he's necessary. I think he's much of the same. I'd move Zacha to wing or kick the tires on moving him too. I don't think he can come back next year, or I don't want to, with Zacha and Middlestat both on the team.
Zacha, good contract.
Yeah,
good
great
contract to trade.
Yeah. Ability to have 50, 60 points. Put him on a third line. Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's some value there. I just don't know how much, but you know what? I the makeup of my team, Pavel Zacha's not a great fit.
Yeah, especially what you're doing right now. Like you're not.
Yeah.
If you are a playoff team and Pavel Zacha's on your third line, you love it. In fact, 22-23, that's a great example. You know.
Right.
The last thing, kind of, you had said it earlier. This team's not going to tank.
No.
Even if it's in their best interest, they're not going to do it. And there's certainly the argument of, Pasta's in his prime. You don't want to necessarily do that. You've got some decent pieces here. But you look at next year's draft, there's no generational talent in this draft, but there is next year. Okay. Yeah. That next Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Connor Bedard is there next year with Gavin McKenna. So what point next year, because we knew early on in this season, it wasn't going to go according to plan. I don't think we knew how bad it was going to be, but if it starts the same way next year, do you think Bruins fans are clamoring for a full on tank by Thanksgiving?
Yeah. I mean, like last place by Thanksgiving, then I think you consider it. You consider sending a couple more guys away. That only really happens, I think, if you have a couple of major injuries. If McAvoy's out, if Pasternak's out, then for extended periods, then I think you consider it then. I just don't think it's going to be considered unless they are fairly confident they have no chance to dig themselves out of a big hole. Because you saw even with this year, they kind of still thought they were kind of in it for a while when it was fool's gold. Yeah. So it's going to take a lot for them to tank or to try to tank or whatever you call it. But by American Thanksgiving, they're in last place, and Sweeney's really floundering. He could probably try to go get McKenna.
I would love it, man. I would love it. And then they'll make Gavin McKenna into Charlie Coyle, and the rest is history.
That's great. Yeah, be defensively responsible. It'd be great.
Oh, it's the Bruin way, baby. That's just the way we do things around here. Oh, man. Anyway, Matt Barry of the Bruins Benders podcast. He's getting a bit of a better sleep schedule now without the post games. They're over. But you guys are still dropping episodes, and you got even a new after show coming in.
Yeah, we do. We have a Benders off here. We talk about everything else, a little humorous, a little bit showing our personality. That's through the ITR Plus subscription, $5 a month. You can subscribe. We have all sorts of content on there. And then on we had this morning, actually, our new episode with a season wrap up kind of dropped this morning. It'll be on YouTube later today. And then we'll keep going weekly with the episodes. We might do some lives here and there and just try to keep it going through draft, because the draft lottery and draft are big deals now this year for the first time in a while. So that'll keep us going with some content. So, it was a good year for us. It was a really good year for us. But not a great year for a fan.
Coach fired, captain traded, team stinks. It's great for content. I don't mean to spoil it, but the Benders do give the Bruins an A+ on this season, just so you know when they give out the final grades.
Right. Yeah, out of the bag.
Matt Barry of the Bruins Benders podcast. Matt, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Cam. Thanks so much.
The Cam Show rolls on as we go next. I've got to do this. I don't like doing this, but I have to. Pete Souza has been bitching about it to me, talking about Celtic City. I've got to talk about the Rick Pitino error with the Boston Celtics, and it might not be the way you think I'm going to talk about it. That's next on The Cam Show.
We'll be right back after these quick words from our sponsors. This is Rogue Media Network.
Get paid faster with Bill, the easiest way to send, receive, and manage your payments. No more delays, no more hassle. Whether you're a freelancer or a business, Bill makes payments seamless and secure, simple, fast, and reliable. Sign up today at Bill.com. Overwhelmed by your inbox? Clean Email is here to help. Organize, clean, and manage your emails with powerful automation tools. Say goodbye to spam and clutter and enjoy a stress-free inbox. Try Clean Email today at cleanemail.com. That's CLEAN email.com. Cleanse your body of accumulated toxins and embark on your wellness journey at your own pace. At Global Healing, we provide premium supplements to help your body heal naturally. Combine that with OrganicHemp.com's top quality CBD for ultimate balance. Start your healing journey today at GlobalHealing.com and OrganicHemp.com. Unlock a world of convenience with Mullybox, your one-stop solution for personalized subscription boxes delivered right to your door. Each box is tailored to your taste. Experience the joy of surprises. Subscribe today at mullybox.com. That's MULLYBOX.com. At Tusane's, we understand that maintaining a healthy lifestyle can be challenging, especially in today's fast-paced world. That's why our mission is to make fitness accessible to everyone, anywhere. Committed to excellence, we adopt a user-centric approach guided by ergonomics and medical science. With a team of seasoned professionals in R&D, design, and manufacturing, we prioritize quality across our entire product line. Visit Tusanes.com today and start your journey to better health. That's TOUSAINS.com.
And now, back to our show.
Back to the show, which is The Cam Show on Rogue Media Sports Network. I'm your host, Cam Stewart. Zach Burke with us, as he is 5 days a week, live on YouTube, and then wherever you get your podcast, talking nothing but Boston sports. We have already done the Patriots' golden ticket that has fallen into their lap and the trade they need to make right now to open up everything in the 2025 NFL draft. We have caught up with Matt Berry, the Bruins Benders podcast, to talk about how the wheels fell off this season and what needs to happen going forward. So if you missed it, check those out on the channel, on YouTube, and again, wherever you get your podcasts as well. Now we talk Celtics, and not this, I've already done the Orlando Magic preview. Check that out on the channel. There's not much to it, but the Magic could give them a bit of a series. But what I really want to talk about is Celtic City. And I was critical of it going in because it's just too long. 9 episodes is still too long. But I think Bill Simmons and the team over there has handled it really well. And it's probably because I am a big time Celtics fan and a big time, sports historian kind of thing. But I've loved it. Like, I just think they've meshed it together really well. And I think the Celtics do have a lot of intrigue just historically as a franchise. There's like 10 or 12 pro sports franchises that really have that lure, that aura, and the Celtics are one of them. And so getting through 7 episodes now, I think it's probably because I just really like the Celtics, but I think it's been really entertaining and good. And Pete Souza has liked it as well. We've talked a lot about it, but I already know the stories of the 80s and the 60s. I thought the 70s one was really interesting with Dave Cowens. But what I was really looking for was the 90s. Words that nobody has ever said. But I was really looking forward to the episode about the 90s Celtics, the episode of Celtic City, which came out this week. I was so into it because to me, this is the most fascinating period of Celtics history. And ML Carr and Rick Pitino and the opening of the Fleet Center and the closing of the Boston Garden. To me, that this becomes a huge moment era in Celtics history, because I grew up a little bit past the 90s Celtics, but it's weird thinking back on now because of such the glorious eras that they've had. And we obviously all knew about it, but kids of my generation and a little bit older than me, when we were growing up, it was tales of the past. The Celtics were not what they used to be. They were just living off the cigar smoke and the 16 championships at that point in the parquet floor. But it was a generation without really any kind of competitiveness, right? Like, kids my age and my brother's age, who's 5 years older than me, our growing up of the Celtics was players dying and Rick Pitino and brand new building and just living off the past. And the 90s was the late 90s in particular was really the epitome of that. They start talking about 96, 97, which just, if Twitter was around, man, I mean, you couldn't have been a Celtics fan on social media in 96, 97. They're statistically one of the worst teams ever in NBA history, 15-67 under ML. And they are the odds-on favorite for sure to get the number 1 pick. And I'm sure everyone in the league thought that's what was going to happen, right? The Celtics, the Leprechaun, and Red Auerbach, and they're going to send ML to the draft lottery, and they're going to get the number 1 pick and get Tim Duncan and change the franchise. And they don't. They don't. They get number 6 and they get number 3, and ML's just sitting there with this, like, they called it the Mona Lisa smile. Like, is he even smiling? And that's like ML's basically last act as a member of the Celtics organization to go there, because Rick Pitino didn't want to, the new coach and president of the team. And it's like rock bottom in terms of Celtics luck. You know, they had the next best player, Len Bias, the next guy to lead their franchise. He dies the next day after they draft him. Reggie Lewis, a bit overblown, but still, I mean, an all-star player, an absolute face of the franchise, a guy who was well ahead of his time. I mean, I say kind of a poor man's Kevin Durant. He drops dead. You have the worst season in the history of the franchise, and you're going to get this guy who then leads another team to a dynasty, and you don't get him either. And the sick irony of all of it, of all of that 97 draft, the sick irony is that they do draft a Hall of Famer. They get the number 3 pick and they draft a Hall of Fame player. They draft an NBA Finals MVP. And that rat Rick Pitino traded him 51 games into his career. Could you imagine if that happened today? Like, genuinely. Could you imagine if someone who was picked number 3 is traded halfway through their first year? If Jason Tatum, the number 3 pick in the draft, or Jaylen Brown, the number 3 pick in the draft, is traded 51 games into season number 1 for pennies, for nothing? This is not like the Andrew Wiggins trade where you trade the number 1 pick, but you also get Kevin Love. This was not that. And I've taken on this weird persona in the last couple of years where I'm a quasi Rick Pitino defender. And what I mean by that is it's so easy to look back now and say, Rick Pitino is one of the worst things that ever happened in the Celtics. And that's true. That's true, by the way. But it's these people that say, why did they ever do that? They never should have done that. That's 2020 hindsight. Because at the time, in 1997, there was no more slam dunk of a coaching hire than Rick Pitino. Okay? I mean, obviously, uber success at the college level, took Providence to the Final Four, national championship at Kentucky, which, by the way, gets to Kentucky. That's an absolute mess. The Unforgettables, they basically had the death penalty almost going into that his tenure with Kentucky. It was an absolute disaster, mired in scandal there. And by the way, he was a pretty good NBA coach too with the Knicks. And at this time, you start to see the kind of coach/president, coach/GM. And so to me, that's a slam dunk hire, other than the fact that Red Auerbach didn't really like him. And that probably should have been the writing on the wall. But I hate that revisionist history of, they took a college coach and made him the coach of the Celtics. Yeah, that was he was in his 40s. He was still young. Like, that was a no-brainer hire at the time in 1997. Now, did it work out? Of course it didn't. And what they hit on in the Celtic City doc in this episode, which is the key to it, is that the guy just had no goddamn patience. None. And he comes in here and he thinks he can make the Final Four in the first year, because that's what you do in college basketball. And he look at the scraps he had at Kentucky, and he made them into an Elite 8 team in year 2, I think it was, year 1. And you can't do that. That's not how you rebuild in the NBA. And you look at it, and you look at the top 10 draft picks that he did have. 3 years, he had 4 top 10 picks. Well, actually, he had 3 of them, but the guy, ML, had the one before. So the Celtics, in 4 years, had 3 top 10 picks. Antoine Walker, Chauncey Billups, Ron Mercer, and Paul Pierce. That right there should have been the core of a championship team. You mean to tell me in the early to mid 2000s, that team with that core couldn't have competed with the 76ers, AI 76ers, the New Jersey Nets with Kidd and Vince Carter. The Pistons, who knows if the Pistons would have been there because their best player was on your team. You mean to tell me that core, that team couldn't have competed with those guys? And by the way, they did make it to a conference finals in 2002. That team absolutely would have been playing in the NBA finals. You would have reignited Celtics Lakers, and we would have started this thing 6 or 7 years before we actually did, which happens in 2008. But Rick Pitino thinks he can turn it around year one and be college coach Rick, which I don't have much sympathy for because he had already been an NBA coach. And what makes it all the more glaring, this Rick Pitino error, say it with a hardcore Boston accent where you add R's on the end of the word. What makes it even more glaringly bad is the fact that, 15 years later, after you hire Rick Pitino, about 10 years or so after you can his ass, you went and you did something similarly bold, right? In 2013, you had traded Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. You had traded Doc Rivers. You'd really ripped this thing down to the studs for the first time since Rick Pitino. And you went out and you hired a college coach. You hired a 36-year-old college coach who had only coached in college and wasn't coaching at Kentucky. He was coaching at Butler. Now, he did take them to 2 Final Fours, but still, that had Rick Pitino written all over it. But instead, Brad Stevens had some goddamn patience to him, and he didn't make himself the president. He had a good GM along with him, and Danny Ainge. And they have a lottery pick that's not a very good one, pick number 6, and they make him into a defensive player of the year, Marcus Smart. And then the Brooklyn trade really pays off. And obviously you get the number 3 pick, Jaylen Brown, a big reach at the time, booed at the time that he was drafted inside the TD Garden. He becomes a finals MVP. The next year, one of the great moves in Celtics history, they've got the number 1 pick in the draft for the first time in the franchise history. And they say, we don't like the guy at number 1. We don't like the guy at number 2. We're not going to tell anybody that. Although I think Celtics fans had a good idea of how they felt after Jason Tatum's workout. And they trade to number 3 to get the guy they want at number 1. That's the difference here. The Celtics made good picks in those 3 years with the 4 top 10 picks. Ron Mercer, good role player, could have been absolutely a good role player on a good team. Antoine Walker, heck of a player. Paul Pierce, Hall of Famer. Chauncey Billups, Hall of Famer. But they didn't have the right guy. They did not have the right guy in charge, not by a long shot. You fast forward to Brad Stevens, get a pretty damn good role player in Marcus Smart. You get potentially 2 Hall of Famers in Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. But they have the patience and the wherewithal and the franchise to stick with that. Rick Pitino did not. Rick Pitino thought he was going to the Final Four year 1. That's what he thought. And they beat Jordan's Bulls. Coming off, a championship team. They're about to three-peat for the second time. They beat the Bulls on opening night, and Rick Pitino thinks he can walk on water. And it becomes this dark, dark time in Celtics history. And I mean, he's telling the GM, he's writing letters to the GM saying he's got to lose 45 pounds. The GM has to lose 45 pounds. I don't know about you guys. I don't give a shit how many cheeseburgers the GM eats if he can pull off the deals and find the right guys and make the right draft picks. I don't care. Rick Pitino does because he's an asshole. And as I said on the Pete Souza show earlier today, he comes off just well enough in the documentary that people who aren't Celtics fans, who don't know the whole story, are seeing that. And they see the letter in there and they're like, oh, that's kind of crazy. But he comes off just well enough that I think a lot of non-Celtics fans are like, yeah, maybe it wasn't as bad as they make it out to be. It was because they had a golden opportunity to get back to championship form, get back to glory years, get back to another Celtic pride era. But Rick Pitino could not get out of his own way, and he took the Celtics down with him. Look at Rick's career. He took Iona to the tournament. St. John's won the Big East this year. National championships at Kentucky and Louisville. Well, one of those vacated. Knicks in the playoffs. Providence to the Final Four. The only place he did not succeed, the only place, was as head coach and president of the Boston Celtics. Because he panicked and he trades Hall of Famers. He brings in tall guy after tall guy after tall guy. And this once proud franchise is once again well in the shitter. And you get kids like me who grow up in the 2000s, and you just have stories of the Celtics. You don't have your own. Now, granted, I got it when I was 11, so I didn't have to wait terribly long. My brothers, they had to wait a little bit longer. But it could have been, they should have been in dynasty mode by the early to mid 2000s. They should have been one of the creams of the crop of the NBA. And we should be talking about banner number 20 or 21 at this point. Just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Is Rick Pitino the worst thing that's ever happened to the Boston Celtics? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Only about 10% of you watching are actually subscribed to the channel. Hit that subscribe button. We're bringing you nothing but Boston sports content every single day. So check out the other videos on the channel here. We come to you live on YouTube, high noon Eastern time, 5 days a week, and then wherever you get your podcast. For Zach Burke, I'm your host, Cam Stewart. It's a little ditty that we like to call The Cam Show.
Transform your workspace with Hanomi Ergonomics. From adjustable chairs to standing desks, we provide solutions for comfort and productivity, whether at home or in the office. Improve your posture, reduce strain, and work smarter. Visit us at hanomi.co today. That's HINOMI.co today. Experience the future of secure private cloud storage with Internex. Protect your files with end-to-end encryption, ensuring your data stays private and accessible only to you. Enjoy seamless, fast storage without compromising security. Visit Internex.com today and take control of your digital life. That's INTERNXT.com today. Protect your online privacy with NordVPN. Browse securely, access content from anywhere, and keep your data safe with military-grade encryption. Whether at home or on the go, NordVPN ensures your digital freedom. Stay secure. Download NordVPN today at nordvpn.com. That's NORDVPN.com. Tusains, we understand that maintaining a healthy lifestyle can be challenging, especially in today's fast-paced world. That's why our mission is to make fitness accessible to everyone, anywhere. Committed to excellence, we adopt a user-centric approach guided by ergonomics and medical science. With a team of seasoned professionals in R&D, design, and manufacturing, we prioritize quality across our entire product line. Visit Tusains.com today and start your journey to better health. That's TOUSAINS.com.